What's up, everybody? Lennon here. This is another episode of this podcast live stream thing that we're doing here. I'm calling this thing Stop the Starving Artist, which, if you haven't noticed, is kind of some stuff that I'm working with. I'm kind of doing some rebranding kind of things with this whole channel. And so if you follow me on Instagram, you can find me at stopthestarvingartist.com. The idea here is that I want to help artists and creatives figure out how to position themselves online in a way that connects them directly with their 1,000 true fans. And so it's good to have you guys here today. We are talking about having a plan B. And what's funny is, as we talk about this right now, I am like, okay, I should have had a plan B in place for this live stream, because what happened is as I was getting things ready, it got wonky on me. Like, I was 3 minutes away from having to start this thing, and all of the sudden everything changed because I was like trying to fumble to get everything together. I'm trying this new setup, as you can see, so like things are a little bit different. It looks a little bit different, so I had to plug in my laptop and do some other stuff. So immediately, Ecamm's not working, the microphone isn't plugged in, nothing's in place, and I have like 3 minutes, and I am starting to kind of flip out a little bit. And I thought, how appropriate, because I should have had a plan B in place just in case none of this happened. So, but we're talking about plan Bs in reference to being a creative. So, and especially like trying to develop some sort of creative career, because what happens is, and I was totally a part of this, like, we have people in our lives that just for, I'll say it, they do it because they care, but they encourage us to make sure that, like, okay, I just want you to have a backup plan. I just want you to have something that, you know, if this falls through, like, then, you know, what's you know, like, just make sure you got something in place so that if this falls through, you're going to be good, right? And while inherently I don't think that's a bad thing or a bad idea, there's something that does to our mindset. There's something that happens when immediately our first thought is, I'm so glad that I have other options, because this creative thing, this like art thing or this music thing, just may not work out for me, right? And the reason I think a lot of people just think that it isn't going to work out, or think that creative careers and stuff like that can't happen, is because they know that it takes so much risk. And what's interesting to me now is that when we look at risk and we look at it in reference to what's happening in the world today, right? I'm so glad that I took the risk of getting into this world of like learning online marketing, learning like the space of YouTube, learning how to think strategically, because I now have a job where I get to work with people online all the time. And so that like sense of having something that's going to support us, it's kind of false, right? I believe, and this is just maybe just me, I believe that nobody's going to support or have our best interest in mind more than ourselves. Nobody's going to believe in our project or our dreams or any of that kind of stuff more than we will, you know? And that's like, that's really it to me, is that we have to start with that in mind. What is our plan A, and do we need a plan B? So I want to tell my story here real quick. So Anthony, good to have you here. Anybody else that's in the chat, please say hello. I'd love to answer any questions that you guys have, talk through any of that. So it started for me pretty early on. In high school, I was the kid that was like playing in a bunch of different bands. I was about probably a senior, I think. And I was playing in like a community group. I was in like a rock band. I was playing at my church. I was doing another like jazz band group playing trumpet. I was in a drum and bugle corps in the summers. So I was doing all of these different things at once. And this is in a town of like 10,000 people, right? This is a pretty small town. So to be in this many groups at once is actually pretty crazy, to be honest. And when I think about that, I knew right away, like, this is what I want to do. I want to figure out how to make a living doing this, And so what happened was I went off and did the drum and bugle corps thing, and then immediately got a job as a freelance instructor for a marching band in Pennsylvania. Because if you aren't familiar, I was in a drum and bugle corps, which is like there's an organization called DCI, or Drum Corps International. So this is like the top groups in the world, and the one that I was in was like 7th in the world at the time. We did really well, and we would tour all summer, and then come back and do, then I would just be normal again, except tan, because everything was outside, right? But that gave me an opportunity because I had this skill set to go take that and start to teach these local groups, even at a very young age. And what was cool about that is that like taught me right away, like, okay, there's a skill set here that I'm learning that can be turned into value for somebody else. Like, there's opportunity here. So that was an immediate, like, I feel actually really lucky about that, because having that moment where even at a young age, I was able to see that a skill set that I was learning could be turned into finances was a light bulb for me, because that didn't happen where I was from. And while my mom and dad were both, very supportive, it still wasn't something where they were like, well, this is realistic. They didn't necessarily think that it was like a realistic thing. And that had a lot to do with just kind of, what the struggles they went through. Again, it was more out of love than anything else. So fast forward some time, I end up joining a band, and we start touring, right? And I remember giving myself this, it's interesting to me now in hindsight, but I gave myself these parameters and said, I'm going to give this 5 years. And if I feel like in 5 years it's not growing, then I'm going to quit. And I know that may seem like a long time. It may seem like not very long, whatever it is to you, I'm not sure. But for me, I think it's interesting that even at that moment, I thought, okay, I got to give this some time. And so 5 years later was about the time that we started to really make some changes. Some things started to move, right? And so during that time, I was working at Domino's as a pizza delivery guy, and so were the other guys in the band. So we literally would like tour through the weekends and then come home and deliver pizzas through the week. It was really pretty miserable, because that time frame, we weren't drawing any people at any of the gigs. And, the only money I had coming in was like pizza, and everybody's competing for the best delivery slots. It was like so cutthroat in a freaking Domino's, right? But that was the lifestyle. And so what I want to say to that is, like, I knew though that all the Domino's situation was a smart move for me to say, I need this to support myself, but this over here is still where I'm putting all my eggs. Like, my eggs are all here, like, but over here I still have to make a living. I still have to do what I need to do, right? So I gave up college. I gave up all of that stuff to pursue this thing. So fast forward 10 years into that, we had been fortunate enough to be on a couple of like Billboard Top 200 Heat Seeker records and do a couple things. I had co-written with what would eventually be a Grammy nominee. And that just continued to like be little bitty things that, honest to goodness, like I just never had any idea would even be an option. But the reason I believe that happened is because I never gave myself a plan B. I just gave myself an opportunity. I never gave myself this thing where I was like, well, if I don't I'm going to go to college to make sure I'm still supporting this thing. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't go to college. What I'm saying is, like, when your heart is in this thing, but you're not at least giving it the majority of your time, there's something to be said about that. There's something to be said about not truly believing enough in what you're trying to achieve that you feel like you have to split time, or even more so, in this other place. So holding this other job at a pizza place was almost like just crappy enough that it reminded me how bad I wanted this other thing. Whereas I had other friends that were kind of in the opposite boat, where they were pursuing the music thing, but they did like have these other options. I mean, and it just goes to say, like, those other options won out, because when it got uncomfortable, it was easy for them to transition to this other thing because they had a plan B. They just made it easy on themselves to escape it, right? We got some stuff happening in the chat here. So I'm going to come back to that. Then we'll see. Yeah. So, right, I think that's really what it comes down to, is not so much that we shouldn't have things that support our dream, because we should, but really we just shouldn't have things that overshadow it, right? So how do we do that? How do we think about, a plan B? So here we go. We're going to look here. Hello, I'm a 19-year-old female. Horrible voice. Trust me, I sound like a dying donkey. With hard work and practice, is there a chance to get better? If yes, how can I get there? And can I make a career out of it? Yes, in my case, I do have a plan B and a plan C. Right now, all I have is a dream. Yeah. So, okay. Yeah, cool. Good question. I'm going to sidestep that and come back to it. Okay. So the main thing here that I want to talk about is, how do we then put the thing that we want in the forefront? And to this gal's question here, how do we know whether or not what we're trying to do, if we're good enough to actually do that thing, right? And yeah, I love this idea of like, will we improve enough to be able to do this thing? And I'm hoping that by sharing with you guys the other side of my story, where I am now, that you see how this plays out. Because here's what happens in our life. Like, when we pursue something with our whole heart and we go after it and we just try to make it happen, it never plays out the way we thought. Okay? So even my plan A turned out to not be the thing that took me to where I am right now, right? So what happened over that time frame was 10 years pass, and I started to feel that, okay, I've done another 5 years. I started to feel that sense of like, I want to be with my family. I feel like I'm kind of two separate people. I live these two different lives. That's not something I want. I just want to be able to make more stuff and not feel like I'm a part of like making one record every couple years and then we go out and tour that for a long time. Just my goals and stuff changed. And that was really hard for me, because I thought, here I've invested 10 years into this thing, right? And it's actually somewhat like making me a living and like doing the thing, like I've made it, quote unquote, right? And so it was really tough to make that transition. So I came home and I said, okay, what's the option here? I can't have a plan B. I can't get a big boy job. I have to figure out how to make this work right now, because if I don't, I'm just going to try to figure out how to get comfortable. And that's what happened, is I ended up going into production and working at a recording studio and doing some of that. And then as I did that, I started doing some YouTube stuff. And as I did that, I went to a conference and then I got connected. But what all those things, I'll finish that. And then I got connected with my mentor in my space, who's worked with everybody from, Budweiser to Warner Brothers to all these big companies and helped them grow their online team and build not their online team, their like online video presence, right? Help them with their YouTube and stuff. And then I end up being a strategist for his team, and then going to more stuff and learning more about marketing. And now I'm in this place where I'm building this business to help creators like yourself like understand how to have that online presence for yourself that may not get the biggest following, but gets the right one. You know what I mean? That gets the one that supports you and like gets them to care about you. But this isn't what I thought. I literally had a breakdown like 2 months ago where I was like, this isn't what I envisioned. My like 17-year-old self was like crying for, my 38-year-old self. Like, it was just happening that way. And, it came down to me realizing that because I pursued the things that I wanted in my life in these moments that I knew in my heart, like, were risky, but were things that I could learn, to this gal's point, things changed and they shifted, and I found some new people, and I connected with them, and I was like investing thousands of dollars and tons of time into this stuff and into these things to like find new mentors and do these things. And when we try to play it safe all the time, we don't take risks. And when we don't take risks, we don't get the opportunity for the big rewards. So, how do we know whether or not we're good enough to do something? I would argue that you don't know. I would argue that you just have to pursue it with everything you've got. You have to put yourself out there with everything you've got. And you have to embody this thing of like, this is who I am. This is what I'm about. This is what I am striving to be. We have to get past, we feel like we have to, we feel like we have to have something, then we can do something, and then we can be something. So I heard this from a gal today. We feel like we have to have more money so that we can then go and buy the thing that we need, and then I can be a professional in the field, right? It's not like, what happens if we just believe that we are? What happens if we just say we have to be this thing that we want to be, and then we will do the things that we want so that we have the things that we want? What if we start with being this person first and going after that? What does that do then for our mindset shift? What does that do then for the way that we start to, approach our life and what we're getting into? And this is something I've been thinking about a lot lately, a whole lot, as I've pivoted this little brand like 3 different times in the last year and continue to just kind of hone in on it. This is the hard work. This is the hard work that I know most people, most of my personal clients don't want to do, right? But the ones that do it are the ones that succeed. They're the ones that start to see things change because they pursue something with not only passion, but focus, with a plan, with an idea. And when they take all those things and put them together and they plan it out, and they know who they're going for, and they know what they're all about, and they know what they're trying to say, and they know why they want it. When you understand those things and you can go for it, and you put some parameters in there and say, here's some measurable goals that I'm going to try to achieve, just like, hey, I'm going to give this 5 years and see what happens, right? What's better, like doing that and being ecstatic that you gave it the go, and like feeling good and connecting with somebody that you never would have connected with that led you down this other place of like being really passionate? What's better, that or playing the safe route and like going and doing the thing that feels like the right thing to do because somebody else told me it was the right thing to do? Like I just can't abide by that as a thing, I'm afraid. So I'm just all about this idea of how do we make sure that we don't necessarily have a plan B, but we just have something that supports us. So when I say go full on, you still have to have a job. You still have to have money in the bank. You still have to be smart about your business. You still have to do these other things. There is no escaping that. That's life, right? But that doesn't mean that you need to go and like try to juggle all these things and never give the dream that you have the full attention. That dream that you have deserves the attention. It deserves an opportunity for you to go after it. And it deserves the opportunity to give you something that you never thought was even possible, and that allows you to do something completely different that fulfills your life in a whole different way. I think that's the most amazing thing about my personal life experience, is just all of these little trails that have kept me in a circle, right? But they've all led to something new that has grown me as a person, that's grown me as someone in business, that's grown me in the arts, and like helped me to be more connected in different ways. So I hope this is helpful for you guys. I hope this feels like something that you can grab a hold of. If I want to recap a couple points, it's, make sure that you understand what your dream is. Write it down. Like, get clear on what the dream is that you're trying to achieve, and put some parameters around that and say like, and give it time. You can't just say I'm going to do this for a year and see what happens, right? Give it some time and say, I'm going to commit this amount of time and I'm going to see what I can do with it, but I'm going to go full on. And then make sure that when you give it that time, you also support it. Like, make sure that you have things there. Make sure that you're getting paid, that you have a job, that you're doing something that like keeps you afloat, that keeps you going, that reminds you like where you're headed. Okay. And then lastly, just embrace the feeling that you get when it's like, this feels right, but it also feels pretty stinking scary. Because usually those are the nuggets that like lead us down this trail of, I'm about to connect with somebody that I didn't even know was possible. And I'm about to, be able to really have opportunities that I didn't even know existed. And I think that that's pretty amazing. I went to Vid Summit, which is like a YouTube conference a couple years ago. And I remember thinking like, next year I want to somehow be in the room with these professionals. Like, I want to be in here as somebody like in this industry. And I was. And it wasn't because I'm amazing. It's because I took risk. It's because I wasn't afraid to like apply for things and do things and go after stuff. And it was like, the next goal is, how do I start speaking for more conferences, doing more things where I'm helping musicians and artists and filmmakers and photographers, like creatives, on a bigger level? Like, how do I start to really develop an audience for this? Because I want to serve people. I want to serve a lot of people, right? And so that's my next move. And what does that mean? Like, I have to take risk. Is it worthwhile for my time right now to be here, like doing this podcast and this live stream for, like 5 people online? Yeah, it totally is. But that's the work that some people aren't willing to do. And what I know is that if I keep doing it and I bring you guys something that helps you, then, people are going to talk, like, it's going to help people. And then that's going to trickle down and it's going to keep moving. And that's all I want, is to like help somebody. How can I, like Seth Godin says, if you just show up every day and say, how can I be of service today? How can I be of service to somebody today? And this isn't me trying to be Mother Teresa of the arts world. It's just me saying, like, I just want so bad for people to believe in themselves more so that they can do more with their life. That, for right now in this moment when I can, and I'm not having to, be with my kids or my family for half an hour, then like, I'm going to keep doing these things. I'm going to see what happens. And then I'll pivot and I'll change and I'll move forward. And I want the same for you guys. Like, try things, test things, give them time, give them energy, and just see where it leads you. See what happens, okay? And email me. Like, let me know if you did it. Seriously, email me or send me a message on Instagram at Stop the Starving Artist. Check it out. And I'm working on getting active over there, because right now I'm putting all focus on YouTube, because I know that that's just where I can spend my energy and it feels the most right for me. So send me a message. Anybody got any questions? I'll take a couple minutes and answer those. But if not, I just want to say thanks so much again for listening. So we're looking here. We got 4 or 5 people in the chat. Yeah, Anthony saying you just got to be a good egg. I do agree. Like, one of my favorite things that that I remember from somebody was like, if they said, how do you get more gigs, or how do you do more things? It's like, thank the people that you don't think about thanking in that moment. Like, we used to go around and like, at a venue, we would thank all the staff at the end of the night, shake everybody's hand and be like, thanks for taking care of us. Really appreciate you. Like, you guys are the best. Just like really complimenting those people, and that stuff trickles down, because I can't tell you how many times we ended up getting something else because somebody said, man, those are just the nicest guys. They're really hard workers and they're just out there doing cool stuff. So that stuff goes a long way. It really, really does. Which I know seems surprising, but that's not just in real life. Like, that's online too. Like, if more people started thinking of social media like real life, which I know it isn't, but those same contextual ideas of like talking to each other and thanking each other and showing gratitude and respect and love, like I think we'd see a lot more stuff happen. Cool. Anybody else? Great. Well, thank you guys so much again for checking this out. I'm trying to show up here every Wednesday this month, which I believe I missed the first one. So I'm going to try to at least do one more, and then I'm going to reassess and see what happens. So if you have suggestions here in terms of this podcast or these ideas, if there's stuff that you want to hear about, drop them in the chat, drop them in the comments below. Let me know what you'd like for me to discuss. I would love to go over those things. And I just want to remind you guys, like, I truly believe it, that when you're going after something and you're aligned with the thing that you're supposed to do, then it's all rigged in your favor. And I've been having to remind myself of that lately. And so saying it out loud to you, I think, is important as well. I'm sending you guys tons of love. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you next time.